The first part we discussed the broad implications, the broad issues facing the industry, and maybe some of the techniques or the strategies we might use. What I'd like to do is talk about, for the Centre for Learning Innovation, exactly what is it. You've heard the name a few times. Let's look under the cover a little bit, and let's talk about what might be the opportunities, both in terms of the technologies that we're producing and how you could use them, leverage them for your customers. How we can learn from working with you as members to address the problems that you're facing in the research. And then also to try and give you a view into what's coming down the road, both in terms of the incremental research, where the next generation, if you like, using the phrase that from earlier, or perhaps some of the more disruptive elements. Some of the elements which might put your business models under pressure, so that we can at least be able to forewarn you, and you may be able to develop strategies, and we can help you with that in terms of you can turning this threat into an opportunity. I mean, there was a comment earlier this morning about, as a content vendor, what technologies might there be that allow me to maybe remonetize, but also add value, rather than just being washed away by a potential avalanche of free content. And that's one of the issues I'm going to come back to in this presentation and in later presentations. So, I said I'm Vinny Wade. I'm Professor of Computer Science in Trinity College, and I'm the academic director for the Centre for Learning Innovation. Background, I have about 20 years research experience in the area of e-learning. Particular focus is on personalization, but it's much broader than that. And for 10 years, I also, in my spare time, ran the e-learning service for Trinity College Dublin. 17,000 students, undergraduate and postgraduate. And we went from a small number, less than 5, online courses when I started, to over 60% of the courses had online elements, and we've now raised that to 80. So I come from a background of trying to do the research, but also really try and get it out there and get it used, and understanding the difficulties in that transition. So the mission of the centre is to examine, create breakthrough research for learning innovation. And breakthrough research can be in the form of today's technology that you might be familiar with, social media, some of the collaborative tools, the mobile phone, smartphones, iPads and so forth. But there'll also be things that maybe are a little bit further out, like the augmented reality, like the games, and how games really is beginning to be played within the learning sector, but how they're actually being used. And personalization, which is one of my areas of interest, where we actually are tuning the learning and tuning the experience without necessarily having to recode or rechange the technology. How do you actually do that? And these are the kind of things that the centre is concerned about, but it's looking on doing this with partnering industry. So we have the leading research groups in the background technologies, but we have to partner with the industry partners to be able to understand that last mile, to be able to understand how to apply it, what are the innovations, and to work together with you to be able to then leverage that for your customers, for your organizations, for your revenue value. It's unusual having an academic talking about industry and talking about raising value for the industry, but that's what we're doing, because I think academia has shifted a bit. We are definitely interested in the blue skies research, that's one of our focus, but we're actually trying to look at how can I get it all the way down to use. And that's, I think, the modern academic. If you talk to the top academics around the world, that they're now in the ICT spectrum looking at that whole span. And when it comes to that latter half, we have to do it with you. So our focus in the centre is on what we call the last mile. It's not yet another learning technology centre. I mean, we know there's lots of technology centres out there, learning technology centres in different countries, and a lot of times what happens is they do these boutique type, really nice, well-guarded, small implementations, tested with a small number of users, independent of perhaps industry, independent of real user bases, and it's really difficult for them to ever make impact. So what we're actually doing is we're focusing on the application and the transfer of breakthrough technology into measurable learning innovation. And we're trying to create a dynamic hub for industry and research partners to design, apply, innovate, trial, and showcase. And we're trying to be a value add for your organization, whether as a customer of e-learning technology, whether a customer of the social media or the related games technology, or as a vendor of technology within the space. We're trying to be able to provide advice, be able to show where the technology is going, be able to apply and lower the risk of technology adoption. So if you think about it, the only way this will work is, first and foremost, you have to have real research experience and excellence. And sometimes, Brendan mentioned today, in Ireland, maybe we look inward sometimes and we can think of ourselves as being greater or bigger than we really are. But as someone who's been spent a lot of time in research in the US and in Europe, I actually see some of the huge uniqueness we have. And the huge uniqueness we have is we're actually more collaborative than an awful lot of other countries. In the US, for example, a lot of times the university will have a number of companies that they work with, but they don't necessarily work a lot with other universities, except where that research is just between the universities. If you look at Europe, they don't have the same concentration of collaborative and complementary skills, all in a small area. Ireland is a small area. We also have a vibrant vertical sector in this area. And we know and connect to the individuals involved in that. So actually we have, if you like, a petri dish perfectly designed for generating new technologies and for looking at how they can really apply. The deep understanding of the learning sector. This doesn't work if our researchers don't understand learning. We've all been there. We've all sat at a presentation where someone says, this is a great technology and it'll be great for learning. A very, very, very distinguished academic was doing a presentation at a conference there, a big e-learning conference about 7 years ago. And she was an expert in search. And she was basically discussing her search research, and her application area was discovery-based learning. And at the end of the talk, it was a very good technical talk. I remember asking the question, I can see the discovery, but where's the learning? And she goes, yeah, that's actually true. The problem was she'd worked on the technology for the search, but had left all the cognitive effort on the learner to decide was that information appropriate, how to best apply it, all of that other part that we know really matters. So in the centre, we have deep experience in the learning sector. That's both from our academic partners as well as our industry partners. And we've proven track record in transfer for success. So all of the research partners within the centre have already commercialised and have commercialisation experience. The reason being is, therefore, that we can actually understand some of the requirements. If I take the perfect example is, academic time runs about 4 times slower than industry time, if you believe the industry. If we have a project, we talk about 2 years. They talk about 8 quarters. So what the centre is trying to do is be able to balance those differences. For the research, you do have to have the longer view, but for the actual impact and innovation, you've got to also have the shorter. How you actually marry those things together. The centre has strong industry direction, because we won't work on something unless the industry actually has a need for it. Now, sometimes we have to work with the industry for them to discover that need, but the key part is that it's actually done from an industry-facing perspective. And the last part is, we really need to look at how we lower the risk of the technology adoption. There are lots of technologies that could play really well in learning, but no one quite knows how will that work, and will the customers take it on. We've got to, in the centre, work out how we can help with that, whether it be by trials with your customers and the technology, whether it be by open forums with consumers of technology. There's different approaches, and we have a number of different suggestions. But again, we want to work with you to help that happen. if I take a look at some of the research partners, Johnny briefly introduced them, but I just thought I'd give a little bit more detail for you. The first one is CNGL, Centre for Next Generation Localization. The name would give you the impression that it's just about localization. It's actually not. It's actually far broader than that. It's about global intelligent content. It's all about how we can make content more discoverable, more reusable, more adaptable, and to generate or remonetize its value. And it looks at aspects to do with creation and curation, typical academic titles. What that means is being able to extract the information out of content no matter what language it's in. Discovery and search, translation and localization, you'd expect that. Personalization, adaptation, how do we actually go about recomposing the content for an individual at runtime? And that content may be yours, but it may also be other type of content that's available on the web. And delivery and interaction. How do you do those multimodal interfaces? You know, Johnny mentioned about Siri. You know, in the center, they've got the world's expert in dialogic interfaces, in speech interface. To be able to leverage that expertise and then be able to apply it within the learning sector. So the center itself has that research at the basic level or at the fundamental level, and the Centre for Learning Innovation is looking to identify those parts which are amenable or are addressing an industry need, and then be able to research how it could be applied within e-learning sector for corporate learning, for schools learning, or for lifelong learning. And the investment there is, you know, CNGL the figure is about 35-40 million over the last 5 years that it's attracted, and that's not necessarily state funding. They go out and get that funding from the European Commission, from other industry, and so forth. So again, it's tapping into the ecosystem that is Ireland research, and Ireland research is very strong today. Second centre as an academic partner is Clarity. Clarity is the Centre for Sensor Web Technologies, and sometimes talking to e-learning people, they go, well, how will that work for learning? And really what it's about is being able to sense about people, sense about place, location aware, and we all know that that's important for learning, and sense about multimedia. And the particular aspect that's currently being demonstrated out there is the work on social recommendation. And that's basically based on your interactions with and looking for content, what other people with similar to you might have recommended, and to do that in ways which is much more targeted than traditionally available today. Third academic partner is Derry in Galway, and they've been championing this notion of semantic web, and particularly searching over the semantic web. A lot of their work is about how we can actually search across this open corpus of linked data that more and more is becoming available. And the fourth partner is TSSG. TSSG have been championing the area of mobile technologies and mobile communications for nigh on 15 years now. I first worked with Willie Donnelly, who's one of the heads down there, 15 years ago, working with industry on different projects. And there's a particular expertise in the area of service management and service analytics, data analytics. So what does that mean? Well, what the Centre for Learning Innovation, really, it's looking at the last mile. But we know the research that's available in Ireland. And what we're able to do is access that research, apply it for learning technology applications, for industry applications, for industry questions, and to be able to then license it through the centre if that's what you want, or to test it out, or to evaluate it, or to bring your customers in to try it out, to inform them about what's coming down the line. So again, we want to be an inclusive centre. We want to work with you to be able to leverage these type of innovations. How does that play with the picture that Johnny said? Johnny mentioned that the industry partners had defined these 4 areas: social and informal learning, mobile learning, immersive learning, and metrics and assessment. But when we put together the centre, one of the things I was looking to do is looking at the complementary skills. And it became clear to me that actually, you know, even with those big centres, there are a number of other places where we need to bring in some people. And we brought in education technologists from TCD under the Craig Group. We brought in psychologists from the psychology department within, specifically the applied psychology department in Trinity. And we brought in Smart Lab, which are a research unit in UCD, which really focusing on e-learning with virtual reality, which we saw as a maybe a little bit further out there, but something which more and more we want to be able to test out for the industry. So what we actually do have is a really strong centre which can leverage these expertise. Now what that means is there are people in these centres who are Learning Innovation Centre employees. They're there to try and help the industry to develop these use cases that you're going to see in a couple of minutes. And to be able to test out the technology and see how does it work together. Johnny presented the consortia, but as we said, this industry membership must grow. And there are hopefully people here from organizations saying, you know, I think our company would be really interested in this. We wanted to hear from you. I know Google said, not quite yet. We won't have a membership available yet, but we'd like to talk to you now. The sooner we can make this happen, the better. And from an academic perspective, you know, it's very difficult from an industry to know where to go in Ireland for particular research expertise, because there's quite a gambit. What we're saying is the Learning Innovation Centre is a collaborative centre. So therefore, it's housed in Trinity, hosted in Trinity. You can come to our front door and we can help you. And we will source or look for the relevant expertise that you want, either within ours, or we'll be able to redirect and ensure that you get the response you're looking for. We need to do that for the sector. And we need to do that for the sectors associated with the sector. And I mean there from the content publisher side, I mean the gaming side, and I mean the multimedia side. The issue then becomes, well, okay, that's all very good, but can you really help us with the last mile? Because, you know, I'm sure every company at some stage has worked with academia and found that, you know what, it was great, but, you know, I thought we'd get so much closer to how it would really work. And in fact, I was left with lots of decisions and I felt uncomfortable about. And what we're trying to do within the centre is really define usages that are futuristic but make a lot of sense and answer key challenges for the industry. And they are defined by the industry themselves. What we're doing also is we're looking to provide authentic evaluations for our technology. That means we will put the effort into making the service available to your customers if necessary for trials. And run those trials and evaluate them and then come back and report about them. And we see that as a key way of growing the impact of the centre. The research is collaborative. The thing we say to our industry partners, the more you put in, the more you'll get out. There's no doubt about that. We've been involved in collaborative research for 20 years. I see it all the time. There's the lurking and the stalking. That's fine, but that will only get you so far. Actually getting involved in a use case or getting involved in a scenario and then really seeing how the technology works can have massive impact and can actually either address a real concern in your company or can really enhance the value of something you already have. And the last part is simplified exploitation. So I know a number of companies have had difficulties over the years in trying to license technology from a university. Within the centre, what we have is again a one-door solution, where a one-stop solution, where the technology can be licensed from the centre itself, and we look after the back end in terms of what university the original idea came from, or where the foreground IP came from, and we will help with that. Because again, we want to reduce the barriers of getting it out there to help you. So, did we do? Well, the first year of the centre, we weren't officially launched. We had a pre-year to try and test out some ideas that the industry challenges that the industry partners gave us, and work with them. And we focused in the first year on social and informal learning. And in particular, we were looking at social discovery, which is not just going up against Bing or Google, but saying, you know what, an awful lot of learning and quality searching is where other people has found it and recommended it. And how can that actually be brought into a learning environment, and not necessarily a formal learning environment, but an informal learning environment? How can we support collaboration in this? And Johnny mentions the word gamification. I have to admit, I'm allergic to the word, because the gaming communities hate it. Because really it's kind of dumbing down what they do. But they have really, really strong expertise in how you can tune motivation. We've seen the birth of volunteerism and crowdsourcing and all those issues that have come forward on the web science today. Well, in this particular look, we're looking at how can we actually leverage that? What are the keys? And the keys are different at schools level, at corporate level, and at lifelong learning, because the motivations, intrinsic and extrinsic, are different. So we've been looking at what can you do? What are the lessons learned? And the last aspect here is personalization. Personalization, most of you would know that if you put in put in a query in Google, and the person beside you put in the same query in Google, you'll both end up with different sets of answers. The results will be different. And it's because Google knows who you are. Okay? Knows your IP address, knows your location, knows the number of... last count, it was about 57 different signals that are affecting their search when you go out there. Now, that's the first step in personalization, where you have this ability to enhance the query independent of what the user thinks that they want, and to be able to improve it. Where personalization for the center is going is, that's okay, but can you actually recompose the experience for an individual that's tailored to their task, to their context, to their prior knowledge, to their mood, to their time? And so the center has been looking at technologies which dynamically stitch that together. That content does not have to be totally well managed bespoke content. That content can be a combination of your corporate content for learning, knowledge documents in your organization, or third-party content available on the web. And where we're moving to is user-generated content. This is content that people are microblogging about and so forth, to bring in that extra just freshness that's needed. And again, it affects motivation, that freshness. It makes it seem much more accurate. But of course, in answer to your question, it means that it adds value to the content you already have. And in doing that, just in time, I mean, we've got to remember that on the web today, over 60% of the content is user-generated now. It's gone past the corporate generation of content. So there's huge amounts of value out there that can be leveraged for somebody's own need. The last part is we want to evaluate it in real third-party user trials. So we some of the things that Linda and Paul are going to talk about, to trial things within organizations for corporate, to trial things within schools, with teachers as a stakeholder, and parents as stakeholders, and to trial things for lifelong learning. And if we look at the different aspects, what we find is that although the way we might skin the technology and the way we might offer the technology, actually in the back end, a lot of the same technologies can be used. So personalization, social search, recommendation, semantic search, reflection, all of those type of services that we've developed as components, we're actually applying in different ways to suit the different contexts. So in the first year, how we have certainly done some breakthroughs around the dynamic personalization of open content. So being able to leverage the open content, and the example I think the demonstration out there is using Khan Academy content from HMH, content from Intel, to support schools and school learning. And to do it in a safe way where the students are not going to go across content that they really want. But the kids themselves, you should have heard them yesterday when they were being interviewed, they were saying things like, you know, the content was more accurate than we got with Google. The content was focused on what I really needed to do, which was much better than if I went off of Google. And I'm not against Google, but that's the difference between doing something that's focused for learning and doing something that's just general purpose information retrieval. They said they found they could do it quicker. It was more efficient. Donald talked about content of chunks of five minutes. Actually, the chunking that we do is in the order of 30 seconds, but we piece it together in different ways. So you end up with a very valuable number of minutes, depending on what you're looking for. And the storyline around that. From the social recommendation is how we can actually leverage that recommendation and do it in a way that encourages other people to recommend. So you end up with kids or adults actually trying to outdo each other in terms of what they're looking at and what they can say to their pals and what they... And all of a sudden you've just turned up the heat hugely on the kind of learning you can do. Enhancing this search over semantic information. We know, or we've probably heard the phrase linked data. A lot of the content out there before was difficult to interpret, difficult to connect. The linking that has been done with the Semantic Web is beginning to make that happen. And the searching over that is currently what's demonstrating out there under the semantic search. Dynamic feedback and analytics for the learning, because learning analytics has become really key. I mean, notice in Donald's new institute name, it's learning and performance, and the two have to go hand in hand. And from our perspective, this is also where the pedagogical aspects come in. Yes, it comes in the design, but it's also comes in terms of being able to recognize what's going on and being able to then look and make educational interventions if need be, or getting out of the way, as Donald said, if appropriate. And then looking at social and reflective interaction. Again, key aspect is learning is a social thing. No one likes to feel totally isolated. There are times we want to learn alone because for speed or efficiency or particular needs, but we have to always remember the social aspect. So I'm not going to take Linda's thunder when she's talking about the actual systems themselves, but we've developed a number of systems. But the key point I wanted to say before is it's not just how we're presenting it on the screens and so forth. It's the technology that's decoupleable and reusable from the back ends. So in here, there's personalization in terms of the recomposition aspects. There's reflection. There's social peer groups. There are recommendations and Twitter feeds there. And then there's an interesting about the ratings of the content that you have. So it's a whole dashboard, and that was being used by, that was the school's one for my pace. That evaluation, and then I'll give, Linda will talk a little bit more about that evaluation there. But it did, I mean, we went into one of the harder places with the school. So we went into teaching algebra to first years. Not exactly the most edifying topic for some first years, but actually we found that their engagement was much higher. And in the corporate space, again, the look and feel might be different, but some of the services, again, it's the same technology behind it. Where are we going in the second year? So the second year started for us already. We're obviously looking at personalized mobile learning, because when it's in your hand, it becomes more personal. So there's other things that we can actually do to that content to make it even more time-based or structured for you. And again, personalization has a direct impact on motivation. If you feel the system is really working for you, you begin to invest more in the system. That's proven. We've been using personalized e-learning in Trinity for the last 10 years. I teach classes on final year engineers, final year computer science, computer science and language, and general engineering students. They're all different backgrounds. They all have different, if you like, trajectories, and they're all very focused on what they want to get done. But I've been able to use personalization across those large classes to be able to suit their needs, give them examples that make sense to them, and give them the motivation and give them the space. Because some of them are already being worked in companies and already know everything about the particular topic. So personalization adapts to their prior knowledge and gives them challenge. Whereas others maybe have gaps, in which case the personalization automatically adapts to those gaps and fills and coaches along the way. Learning content search, again, we're looking at how we can actually mine or gather information from the content to be able to then inform for reuse. We're looking at games, and in particular, the initial is a desk study. We have some prototypes in terms of games, and they're outside, but in terms of providing some feedback back to the industry, this is where it is, and these are the particular opportunities in the sectors, and then making a collective decision based on our industrial partnership on where we go down. Learning analytics, which is to do with content mining and to do with actually analyzing who are the leaders in the social network. We're all talking about collaboration, but you actually, if you can spot the leaders early, you can enhance them. That's the equivalent of turning up the volume. Because if you can enhance them and support them, they will bring the class with them or your group with them. And they'll also create much more value within your network of customers. And looking at augmented reality and learning and begin to experiment in terms of what are the things to avoid, what are the real problems, and what are the real wins. So the Centre is a unique focal point for translating groundbreaking research into learning innovations. We're launched. We'd love to work with you by industry partner memberships, by collaborations, via trials, via attending of events, white papers. Whole gambit of services the Centre will be offering over the next 6 months. And from our perspective, we'd love you to take part. Thank you very much.